One of the top 5 questions that jiu-jitsu students will ask me is whether they should be focusing on drilling or should they be focused on sparring more. So which one of these two options should I be focusing on making my techniques better for increasing my skill set? And to be honest, it's not as simple as just saying do one versus the other. A lot of times there's some bias that goes into that as jiu-jitsu instructors. I like to encourage students that they need to learn more about what they're actually trying to train based upon their skill level and their abilities, because that's going to honestly point them in the right direction. It's not as easy as just picking one at random. I frequently hear a lot of jiu-jitsu instructors or coaches just give a pretty general advice of just stay after it and keep doing it and one day it will happen. While I do agree with this as advice in general, it's nothing really tangible. It doesn't really give you anything to shoot for or to measure against. So in today's video, I'm going to help you guys out by giving you a little bit of a checklist for you guys to focus on, so that way you can determine if whatever you're wanting to train should be drilled more or does it need to be implemented in sparring more. Thank you to all the new jiu-jitsu fans out there. If you've recently subscribed, I greatly appreciate it. If you're one of these fans and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so now. Also, make sure you guys hit that like button down below. It really does help me get seen in the YouTube algorithm and helps me get shared to maybe other people who might need to see this video. Also, if you're a super fan, make sure you check out that super like feature down below, where basically you can leave me a tip and all the money goes back into producing better content for you guys. If you don't already know, my name is Chasen Hill. I've been teaching and training jiu-jitsu now for 13 plus years. And I'm a full-time jiu-jitsu instructor. I also help coach students online by helping them stop feeling lost or frustrated by teaching them how to develop some kind of a training system. So let's get into this concept about drilling and sparring and which one I should focus on the most. So normally when students are asking this type of a question, they're really saying, hey, which one is going to benefit my skill set and which one should I make a primary focus? Should I go to drilling classes more or should I go to sparring classes more? And the first thing we need to understand is that there is a difference of the purpose or the tool of drilling and sparring, and they have different features and they have different functions. So we first need to understand what those are before I can give you guys an accurate recommendation. So the first thing we need to understand is that actually how we learn and how we comprehend jiu-jitsu is we usually do it with 3 phases, and those phases are going to be information, knowledge, and then skill. So skill is what you're able to see black belts do. When you can see them arm lock somebody at a high level competition, they have developed that arm lock over time and put it through a series of tests to develop it in skill. A lot of times students don't want to hear this, but skill takes a long time to develop, and it happens over time with a process or a series of steps. And often we like to skip these first 2 phases of information and knowledge and just go straight to skill. And normally what that relates to is that students are trying to use one tool to fix every problem. Every tool is trying to be fixed with a hammer when sometimes you might need a screwdriver or another tool. And so that's why I'm going to try to help you guys out today. So first, when we talk about information, we're referring to the idea of just learning something new for the first time. So you guys watching this YouTube video right now, the first time you learn an instructional, that was new information. Usually information doesn't have any level of proficiency it has to be reached. It just means that you just have to know that you had seen it and it's buried into your brain at some point. The next phase is taking that information and turning it into knowledge. And the way that you do that is often going to be by drilling, aka what happens in class. Because whenever you're drilling or you're doing some kind of kinesthetic process that we do in jiu-jitsu, the primary focus of that is to transfer and aid that process from short-term memory into long-term memory. So you need to be able to remember the techniques and recall the information, and that is what knowledge is. So information is just knowing you have seen it, and then knowledge is understanding and maybe recalling the steps and doing it against minimal to no resistance. And then the last learning phase is going to be skill, and that's turning that knowledge into skill. And that happens over time with some kind of process. And so we do that process with drilling and sparring against multiple different kinds of training partners. Now, if you guys haven't checked out this video yet, I have this whole video right here talking about the different types of resistance partners that you guys have running around your gyms and how to best use them. So check that out after this video. I always like to give a good example with this information, knowledge, and skill idea. That information would be like you seeing an arm lock. Maybe you showed up to a group class, you saw the arm arm lock and you just watch from the sidelines. Usually the knowledge is that after you have seen the arm lock, can you come back to class the next day and do majority of the steps? If you can, that means it's now knowledge. You have a little bit more understanding than the average person. And then turning it into skill is doing it against a resisting opponent. So doing those arm lock steps against someone who's trying to stop you from doing it. Now, I already know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Well, Chase said that develop skill is like the highest way to do it. That's what all those black belts do. So I'm just going to go straight to sparring and I'm going to skip drilling and I'm just going to try to develop it as skill. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. A lot of times if you skip the first two phases of the information and knowledge and really exhaust those, usually phase 3 of developing it into skill is not quite as easy and it doesn't go as smoothly. And personally, this is why I think a lot of students have a hard time when training jiu-jitsu or trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, is sometimes they try to focus too much on drilling when they should be focused on sparring, or they focus too much on sparring when they should be focused on drilling. So how do I know which one I should be focusing on? What are some guidelines or steps that I can look for? So if you guys are enjoying this type of information right now, make sure you leave me a comment down below about what you're working on, what you find hard to deal with, and let me know, how are you training it? How are you getting better? Now let's go over this checklist to see which one should we make a priority, either the drilling or the sparring, for whatever my focus is. So the first thing I like to say is that whatever you're trying to focus on or whatever you're wanting to train, can you sit down and recall at least 80% of the key important steps to making the move work? So for example, if I know I'm trying to work some type of a sweep and I know there's about 4 or 5 key points that I need to make happen in order for this sweep to work, can you either write them down? Can you name them all? Can you generate the name? Can you understand? Can you do it like Invisible Man style without anybody on you? If you can do that, then that's great. That means that's no longer just information, that's knowledge. But if you have a hard time even writing down the 4 steps that it takes to make the move happen, that tells me that that's only information. One of the best things that drilling does is transfer information into knowledge, because whenever we're doing it kinesthetically and we're doing it with repetition, it's just baking that information into my brain and making those neural pathways connect to each other, and they're making them much stronger. That way, whenever I need to use it in the future, I can generate the memory much faster. So the next thing, deer in the headlights. Have you ever had this moment where maybe your training partner mounts you and you all of a sudden blank out and you're like, I know I've learned what to do from here, I just can't remember it right now? That tells me that your information is very weak in your brain. It's not knowledge yet. You can't generate the memory much faster. So that's where drilling is really going to help that idea. So if you often feel yourself being stuck in certain positions and you know you have learned what to do, but you just can't remember what it is and you can't do it while training under resistance, then that means it's mostly just information. So we need to drill to make that more knowledge. The third thing is, why does it work on some training partners, but it doesn't work on others? So this is actually a good problem to have, because what this tells me from the outside looking in is that you have enough knowledge that you can get it to work on some people, but you don't maybe have enough skill yet to get it to work on everybody. Remember, skill takes a long time to develop and to get good at. So the fact that you can actually do it on some training partners, even if they're less skilled than you, they have less knowledge, maybe you're a higher belt than, they're still resisting in training. They're still trying to stop you, but you can make it work. That means you actually have sufficient knowledge and you're well on your way to developing skill. It's just in jiu-jitsu, that process is never done. You can never have enough skill in an arm lock. You can never have enough skill of a triangle or get good enough or have enough skill at escaping the mount. We're always trying to improve. There's always these new limits that we can hit. And number 4, if I learn this brand new technique, should I spend more time drilling it or should I spend more time sparring with it? And the honest answer is, I'm going to give you guys one of the favorite black belt answers, is it depends. Because it does depend on your skill set and your already acquired knowledge and information. So it's safe to say that if you're a purple belt, there's a good chance that this new technique probably is very similar, or you can connect it to something that you already know. When you can do that, that makes just sparring it and doing it in live training much simpler than if this is your first time to even see anything remotely close to that. So if I'm a brand new white belt and this is my first time seeing triangles, it's going to be very difficult for me to hit a triangle maybe in live training. But if I'm a purple belt and I learned this brand new triangle setup, even if I've never really drilled it a whole lot, I can have a higher chance of making that triangle setup work because of what I already know. That's how our brains work. The more similar information you can gain from it, our brains like to bind to those connections, and it just makes that training even stronger and even better. So as a general guideline, if you're needing to remember techniques better, if you're wanting to get sharper at certain techniques, or if you're forgetting steps, that's really where drilling is going to be mainly important. If you can remember all the steps whenever you're sparring and rolling, but your opponent is just providing too much resistance to you, that just means you need to try to execute it better while sparring and while rolling. And so make sure you guys, once again, check out this video right here, because I talk about a whole system of how to use your training partners intelligently. Now, the other problem could be is sometimes students don't pick a wise training focus, which could definitely happen too. Sometimes they're behind the barrel between two ends. Sometimes they're wanting to learn a brand new piece of information that is way over onto this side of the spectrum that they would even need to drill. They need to learn a lot of information before it ever gets close to sparring. Usually what I encourage students to do is if you're gonna pick something new to learn, try your best to bind it to something you already know, whether that's in group class or you watching an instructional, because it transfers from short-term memory to long-term memory much better, and it stays much stickier. So that way you can start hitting it in training and start developing a strategy to make it better while in training. Now, if you're having a hard time determining what you should be training and why that is, I released a video last week talking about how to pick your training focus, so you guys can check that out right here. And that really will help you guys get started down the right path, talking about maybe what you should be focusing on and why that is. So if you're struggling to making progress in your jiu-jitsu journey, make sure you guys check out my free acceleration guide that's down below. It really kind of helps you guys figure out what you should be training, why that is, gives you some helpful strategies about how to train with multiple resistance level partners. So make sure you guys check that out down below. If you're tired of feeling lost and tired of feeling confused, and maybe you've thought about quitting jiu-jitsu, but you know there's so much benefit and you really don't want to, but you want to start getting results, make sure you guys fill out an application. You can work with me down below, where I will coach you through all of these strategies I just shared with you guys today, give you more in-depth information where I can really go deep dive and I can really start making an impact on your jiu-jitsu, and you guys can really start getting better much quicker and stop feeling lost and confused. Thank you guys for sticking around and making it to the end of another video. I greatly appreciate you guys and all your support. Give this video a like and subscribe down below, and check out those free resources. And make sure you guys check out the next video talking about what you should be training and why that is. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.